Okay, here we are, Pool of Bethesda. So I'm reading from John chapter 5. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. And whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. Now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been in that condition a long time, he said, "Do you want to be made well?" That's an interesting question, isn't it? Do you want to be made well? So that could infer that some people maybe rather would prefer to stay in their sickness, in their problem, because they feel very, familiar with it. It's what they know. And this man, let's face it, that's all he had known for 38 years. So he was kind of settled into his situation. He was settled into being who he was, and then really nothing happening. Could that be a picture of people today? Certainly. Then it says, the sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool, but when the water is stirred, while I'm coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. And that day was the Sabbath. And that's important. We'll get to that in a moment. So, now there was in Jerusalem by the sheep market. Why would the sheep market be here? Because the temple is right over there. So people would go to the sheep market to buy a sheep or a lamb to bring as a sacrifice to the temple. Makes sense that they were buying and selling next to the temple and even using special coins that were especially allowed in this area. And then beside that was this place called Bethesda. Now, you know the word Beth in Hebrew means house. So you have Bethlehem, Bethsaida, we have Bethesda. And so what the word here is the Hebrew word chesed. And in fact, maybe if you know about our ministry, I have a whole teaching series called Hesed, God's loving kindness. It's such a powerful, powerful word. Everybody say Hesed. Hesed. It's a powerful word, and it's translated grace, sometimes mercy, but it's all about God's loving kindness. So this place was called the house of mercy, the house of loving kindness, the house of grace. So you had the temple where all the law was kept, and where you have to make sacrifices, in order to receive. But next door to it, you had the house of grace. You just needed to come here, and an angel would come and stir up the water, and you jump in. It's kind of interesting. You know, Bethlehem means house of bread. See, you have Jesus pictured in many of this. Who is the bread of life? He was born in Bethlehem in the house of bread. Jesus came here to Bethesda, Beth Hesed, which is the house of mercy. Now, sadly, it seems, just like happens in churches today, what was supposed to be a house of mercy, legalism had come in. And there seemed to be, because this man had been in the house of mercy supposedly for 38 years and hasn't received, something is wrong. Could we agree on that? So what is he doing? He is waiting. The one thing we know about this man, he is waiting. Waiting for what? He's waiting for God to do something. I know some people like that. They just spend their whole life waiting. I just feel like the Lord is going to do something. That's what you told me 10 years ago. I'm waiting. He's having a very passive life, waiting for the moving of the water, and once in a while it happens, but he seems to not, pardon the expression, be the lucky one. And so what does he do? He starts blaming. He says, not my fault, I want to get in there, but I'm infirm, so I need somebody else. So it's kind of a tragic picture, isn't it? Here's a man, obviously he believes in God. He believes in miracles. He believes in healing. Otherwise he wouldn't be here. But all he's doing is waiting. Something is going to happen someday. I tell you, I've met a lot of people like that in church. And in steps Jesus, Mr. Hesed himself. He who is full of Hesed, he who is full of grace and mercy, steps in and he says to the man, would you like to be healed? He's like, well, what do you mean? I like to, but I have a problem. There's no one to help. Isn't it interesting that it seems that when Jesus steps in, this man doesn't even recognize Jesus. He's so caught up in the environment of this place that when the healer, the Son of Righteousness with healing in his wings, steps into this place where known for healing, he doesn't even recognize Jesus. So it tells us it's possible to believe in healing and yet not be really conscious of the healer. Believe in healing, have theology about healing, but miss the healer. And so Jesus says to him three things: rise, take up your bed, and walk. And I say, number one, Jesus is the great physician. He says, rise. And I think it meant not just rise physically, it meant on the inside. You are so set in your ways, lying here for 38 years, and all you have known is disappointment and blaming somebody else that it didn't happen. So he says, rise up now. And not just on the outside, but rise up on the inside. Because when you're able to rise up on the inside, the outside will come along. How many know that's true? When we rise up on the inside and say it's possible, then the outside, the circumstances come along. But Jesus isn't only the great physician, he's the great psychiatrist. And he says, pick up your bed. I think because if he didn't pick up his bed, he'd probably go for a loop down these streets and show off his brand new legs and show off his healing. But by nighttime, he said, well, I'm going to go back to what's tried and true. I'll go back there. And he might have laid back and over time become infirm again. So Jesus says, no, break free from this environment of wrong thinking and blaming. And so he says, now, come on, pick up your bed. You're not going to sleep here anymore. And then Jesus, the great physician, the great psychiatrist, and he's the great life coach. He says, walk. Don't stand still. You're so accustomed to being still and waiting. Now step out and walk. And so he does that, and it was the Sabbath. And there, have you ever wondered why Jesus healed so many people on the Sabbath? I mean, it never says in the Bible that Jesus healed somebody on a Monday morning, does it? It never says, and it was Tuesday afternoon. It always says it was Sabbath. You say, couldn't Jesus have done some healings on the other days of the week? You see, what's going on here as well is Jesus is sticking it to religion. He is sticking it to religion. Because religion says, well, you can't do it on the Sabbath. There's many instances in the Bible like that. You can't do it on the Sabbath. And Jesus is showing them this healing is not going to happen by keeping the law of Moses. The law of Moses and the prescriptions of the elders will not get you healing. You will get it by grace. You are in Bethesda, the house of grace, and the healing here is going to happen as every other healing by the grace of God. And so Jesus violated the religious rules. He just violated them. Some of you think I'm a little radical the way I talk here, but when we go to these so-called holy places, Tina has to kind of kick me because I feel like screaming. I feel like screaming. People talk about, oh, you approach the presence of God. I said, no, I don't approach the presence of God in a piece of stone. I have Christ in me, the hope of glory. Don't drag me into that mindset. I'm not going to go back to that. I'm not going to go back to rituals and ceremonies because He who is the light has risen. Are you hearing it? Amen. I guess today seems to be a day where faith for healing comes in your heart. So remember this. Here you are in the house of mercy. God bless you.